now we've kind of had time to digest or recover from this from the shell shock of this amazing achievement from Raducanu and what she's managed to do. What I wanted to do this morning is take the opportunity. Now I've got you, Styrling, and thank you very much for getting up.
No problem.
Doing this at short notice, because you'll appreciate that us Brits are still like, what's just happened here? I wanted to look with you, or at least explore with you, aside from the hype and what a great achievement this is, I want to start this discussion on how did she do this? Okay. Yes, we've had talk about her, obviously, her mental strength, her strength of character, also the fact that she's ironed out certain technical issues in her game. Now, I'm not saying that those aren't important or aren't relevant, but what I want to do is hone this down with you, right, and look at the aspects that you have been talking about with transforming the practice court and the art of winning. What are these factors that are more salient and more relevant to what Raducanu has achieved? And then what I wanted to do with you is, can we look at some practical ways to help the listeners to this podcast start to familiarize themselves with the art of winning process? So what can we do? And my first question then, if it's all right with you, we can dive straight in. I wanted to look at what we've identified at the art of winning, the first strike. So the serve and the S1, which is a shot after the serve, and the return and the R1, because you have made this the core of the art of winning approach, is looking at these first two shots. So my question would be, and we're going to assume that this was a huge factor in her winning, what were the features of this first strike pattern that she was adopting in your view that led to this victory?
The first thing that I noticed about Emma is that she was focused, it seemed to me, after watching point after point after point, whether it was serving or returning, that she seemed to understand how to control the middle third of the court. And so if you're familiar with the art of winning and how we look at the court, we divide it into four sections. So we have the middle third called the cages, and then the outside of the middle third are the corners of the court. And she seemed to be extremely methodical about playing the first couple of shots into the middle third, deep middle third, called the cages. So we have the ad cage and the deuce cage. And we use A, B, C, D. This is a very popular way to divide the court up, coined by Craig O'Shaughnessy, the great Craig O'Shaughnessy. And so we talk about B. B is the deuce cage. C is the ad cage. And no matter how you phrase these sections of the court, they are extremely powerful places to begin the point for a variety of reasons. And so, but that is my initial gut. When I watched her, I thought, wow, she's not playing the S1 or the return or the R1 into the corners right away.
No.
As far as her initial repetitiveness of those two shots, maybe sometimes maybe the ball will shoot off into the corner on the R1, but it was extremely rare occasion. And I did talk to a couple of my students who are both 15 years old. And the first thing they said to me was, Coach, it was such a boring match, but it was so beautiful to watch. It was that all that you've always told us is that boring wins a lot. And I thought that was interesting that they used that word, and we've used that word here at the Art of Winning, and because it's not fancy, and that's why you coined that term, boring. So all the credit to you, Dan.
But boring wins. But it's interesting. I mean, we use that term to kind of discipline our players, and I suppose it's more for shock value. It's like, what boring, hey, but I mean, there's a whole thing that we're looking at with our mastering pressure course where we go into this in more detail. So yeah, boring.
And it's really once you start going into
very much an art winning term, but it doesn't actually mean it was boring in that sense. It was it was something else, and that's what I wanted to ask you about. Was was there a specific cage pattern? Because as we know, the cage, we're starting to adopt this term in tennis and tennis coaching now. But was there a specific type of cage pattern that you observed? Because, all right, I know that you did because you told me. And I sat up plotting it, and I'm going, oh my God, Styrling's got it right again. On Sunday, right? Oh, he's doing it. Can you describe that specific cage pattern?
Yes. So even though when you first said boring, I thought that is a brilliant way to explain what's going on. But when you start to dive into this, the boring becomes extremely exciting because you understand as a player that it is perceived what you're doing is boring, but what you're really doing is something extremely exciting and powerful. And what I noticed about the cages is, let's say that you're returning serve. So Emma's returning serve from the deuce court. If she plays her return into deuce cage, B, I call that a reverse cage. If she's returning from deuce and she returns into C, that's called a run cage. Now, those two shots are very different. If she reverse cages, so she returns into B, she's putting the ball right back into the server. And the server actually has to pivot away from the ball. So they have to pivot, almost drop step back off the ball. Whereas if Emma is returning from deuce and she hits it into C, the ad cage, the player just takes a step toward the ball. And that's a very distinct difference when you have to pivot away from the ball or pivot back off the ball versus step toward the ball. And so it's problematic for the server if they have to pivot away from the ball, because they have to create more of a rally shot or even maybe a defensive shot. If they're really on balance, they could counterattack. But I didn't see any of the players that she played the entire tournament be able to counterattack off of the reverse cage. They almost always had to play a rally shot or a defensive shot. So you have the 5 shot scenarios. You can attack the ball. You can defend the ball. You can challenge, hit a challenging shot. You can hit a counterattack shot, or you can hit a rally shot. So we talk about the 5 fingers, right? The thumb is attack. The pinky is defend. The index finger is the challenge shot. The third or ring finger is the counterattack, and the middle finger is the rally. So all the players that she played throughout the entire tournament seemed to have difficulty with this reverse cage. Now, she not only happened on the return, but she would hit her R1 there, or she would hit her S1 there. So when she was serving, the return player would return back. She would reverse them. Now, she did use the run cage, but what was brilliant about Emma, and I haven't talked to Emma. I haven't talked to her coach, and I don't know if this was a pre-planned situation. It almost seemed to me that it was something that she has rehearsed over the years, and it has become intuitive to her that if she goes here, it causes problems. It causes her opponent to become frustrated, or she at least eliminates her opponent's ability to attack her early in the point. And so, we use that term neutralize. Well, it's almost like she neutralized her opponent and caused her opponent to hit a neutral shot or a rally ball in the beginning of the point. To me, this was the sort of the mystery, the solved mystery of why Emma did not drop a set the entire US Open 2021 tournament. I know that sounds like a simplistic answer, but if you dive deeper and look at shot by shot, this was something she did intentionally, whether it was a subconscious response based on her rehearsal in practice. Because there's no way that her coach and her primary coach, or either, I believe it was probably her primary coach, there's no way she didn't rehearse these patterns. There's just no way. I mean, they had to spend enough time getting into this ability, or she took it upon herself. I don't think that's the case. I think there was a collaborative effort to train her in a way where she did not take unnecessary or high-risk shots at the beginning of the point.
Well, it works both ways, doesn't it? I mean, you can tell someone to do this.
Yes.
As you and I both experience. You get in a coaching situation, you can tell someone to adopt these patterns that Emma would do, and you can say, look, these are the results it will give you. And they might even agree with you, but still not adopt them. They'll do so. They'll just carry on with their habits. So when we say was it self-generating from her, there has to be a lot of belief on her part. You can't do this casually. You can't just kind of pick it up. There has to be some agreement, or almost total agreement from the player.
Let me expound on that right there. See, to me, the magical part about Emma is that she, as a player, as a how old is she? 18? She's 18.
Yes. Yeah.
As an 18-year-old young lady, she has the discipline to stick to it, to not veer away from these first strike patterns that she believes in, that she's rehearsed, obviously, that she understands how to manipulate the cages in this way, and to be able to go back and forth and to choose which one she'd like to hit to at a particular time. Because the first 4 games of the semifinals against Sakiri, when she was returning serve, she started off the first couple of points hitting run cages on the return. And then when she got down love 30, she started going into reverse cages, and she finished the game doing reverse cages.
Yes.
literally over and over and over, and came back from love 30 and 15-40 and won both of those games. Actually, it might have been, it was both their serve and return, which was, I don't believe that was an accident, because it happened 4 games in a row, twice on her serve, twice on her return. And then it just began to repeat itself over and over and over again as she just routed Sakiri. And Sakira is, I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, she's a very aggressive player. And so to be able to begin the point and smother her, that like Emma did, that was what caused Sakiri, it's Sakiri, right? I'm sorry. That's what caused her to be so frustrated. And you could see it on her face. And she could not do anything with Emma's first strike 2-shot pattern. She couldn't get on top of the point as far as shot momentum. And so it made her very frustrated, because she's an aggressive player. So
this is the second feature of the first strike patterns is, well, there's the what they're doing.
Right.
Which I love your explanation. I had that. I tried it in my matches yesterday and over the weekend myself. But anyway, there's the what, but then the second part to the first strike is how it's then applied point after point after point, and that's going back to the boring aspect.
Correct.
Because when you're training these players, I think you've had it with your son Pierce and Trevor as well. And I know you've been telling me about this. When you get them to watch, say, Nadal and Djokovic, and look for these first strike patterns, they go, he just does the same thing. That's the first thing they say. That's what they mean. And that's why we wanted to get into this, but it's boring. Because that's it. He's going there, but he doesn't deviate. What then that causes in the opponent? It's the opponent. Then they don't do the same thing. They're reacting. So their shot pattern, they don't have this embedded first strike approach, and they will do things on the hoof.
Right. I mean, it's so interesting we talked about this before. When we hear the word first strike, we think attack the corners, hit the ball hard, and it's almost like here at the Art of Winning, we're redefining how to look at first strike. It's striking strategically and tactically in places that are not necessarily flashy or exciting, but yet are so powerful. And you get the player on their heels quickly, and it's actually hitting the ball right into them and causing them to create time and space. That's why it's called the cage. If you cage your opponent, you are forcing your opponent to create time and space to send the ball with more of a intentional way, offensive way, right? So you want to be on offense, or at least try to stay on offense, or dictate the point, if you will, stay ahead in the shot momentum. And so it's so interesting that the kids we talk to, the junior players, they think it's boring because it's not flashy, right? It's not in the corners. But
that's what we're discussing, I think, with something I'm very excited about, and that we've worked on together in the negotiating pressure course that we'll be releasing towards the back end of autumn. And in that, we look at this problem of the dramatic.
Yes.
The dramatic mindset. And if we look, and it comes back to our principle about perception, one of our 12 principles that we've been developing and discussing over the last 2 years. And this tendency to be dramatic is kind of fueled by what we do when we watch a match. So what are they replaying? They're replaying winners. When we're watching it on the TV, they're not playing what actually wins, right? And you said it at the beginning. Occasionally she will come out of the cage, and she will go to A and D.
Of
right?
course, yeah.
And hit those flashy winners into those zones. But I think the mistake, and you hear it with the commentators saying that is what was responsible for her winning. And I think it's this attachment to the dramatic. And really, what we're doing at the Art of Winning is trying to counter that and give a different outlook and perspective into the match. And I think a far more interesting one, certainly a far more effective one in terms of the results it brings, and a change in the mindset that people cultivate when they're players. I want to look, though, Styrling, if it's all right, at the Raducanu's return of serve, because everyone talks about the serve. Another problem we have in tennis is that I'd like you first to just remind us that why it is that what role the return plays in the women's game in particular, and why it was that Raducanu's return was so instrumental in her victory.
Well, when you look at the women's game, the women across the board, they don't serve quite as hard as the men. So you're talking about serves that are, majority of the serves are hit, they're under 120 miles an hour. So somewhere 110, 115, 120 are the hardest serves that the women are seeing from each other. And so even the second serves down in the 80s, high 70s, Emma did not take a lot of risk in the sense of hitting corners, hitting A and D. She was very disciplined about caging, reverse caging there. Here's what's interesting about that statistically. She doesn't miss returns at all. You did more of the stats. I don't believe she missed a return in the semifinals. Maybe one or two the entire match. She hit two. She missed two returns.
Yeah, including when she was aced. So was not
right. It really isn't a missed return.
Yeah, when we're talking about a missed return, a stunning statistic. You can't. But why is it then that has such a dramatic effect in the women's game?
Well, first of all, the return of serve is the most error-ridden shot in tennis, especially on the women's game.
Yeah. Because
the serves are the women are able to get a better look at the serve because it's not traveling as fast as the guys, and there's this temptation to really go after the return, and that's fine. But the way Emma did it is she went after the return. And Leylah Fernandez did this a lot as well. So one of the reasons why she was there is they go after the return and pound the cage, brutalize the middle third of the court right off the bat. And like I said, get their opponent who's serving to reverse and to step off that S1 instead of stepping into the S1 or running to the S1. And so you understand all the players, and even if you play this at a junior level, okay, and there's the differences are a little bit, there's differences there. Professional players are extremely athletic. They love to run and stride into shots, okay? I haven't met too many players or even seen too many professional players that like to turn out of the way of the ball that's right on top of them. it is problematic. So, and it's not something that you typically practice on the practice court. You typically practice going back and forth and hitting the ball kind of in stride, or moving to the side and then settling, instead of getting out of the way and striking the ball. So her return of serve, her error rate is so low on the return of serve that it just builds up over time. And it puts tremendous pressure on the server, because they have to play S1s over and over and over. The serve player is not getting any free points off of Emma's return, because it's just coming back. It's like a boomerang.
Okay, so that's the effect on the opponent, which is probably the most important aspect. Could you just describe some of the features of her return?
I would say that first of all, she's not standing back off the baseline very, very far. She's probably 3, 4, 5 feet at most off the baseline, and she steps into the returns. She moves forward, takes the ball early, and then she finishes in a tremendously balanced way, and she's back resetting to the middle part of the court. So she understands how to physically move into the return and then come back. That's at least what I saw.
Yeah. Is there a relationship between between her return and the R1? So her shot after the return, because we are, you and I, let's face it, we're big on the fluency between the serve and the S1. Can you just describe what tends to be lacking or overlooked on the movement or the cadence between the return and the shot after the return in tennis? What have you found, and what was it that Raducanu does better?
Well, I would say that the movement, those two shots in practice are not played, they're not rehearsed enough in practice, in my opinion. So you're returning from deuce, you've got to move to your left, and then you've got to decide which way you've got to move next, right? And then from the ad, you've got to move from left to right. Okay, so those are two different movement sequences, and then you've got to move to the R1. And so Emma's ability to strike the ball, move to her left from deuce, right? She's returning from deuce, move to her left, and be able to respond back. And she's typically caging both of those balls. She's either going to reverse on the first one and reverse on the second one, or she'll reverse and run. So I saw more reverse runs and run reverses than reverse, right, on the cages. And so, and she was mixing those up quite a bit, but she did more reverse runs, it seemed like to me, when she really wanted the point, when she wanted to just get on her opponent quickly. And so rehearsing these in practice are extremely important. And obviously being athletic, working on crossover steps, working on crossover to shuffle. I didn't see a lot of shuffle out of the corner when she returned. She was returning, crossing over, shuffling, and she's in position. And she didn't have to worry too much about running to the next ball because she was caging the return. And so we know that the most difficult angle for a player to create is from the middle of the court. There's really not an angle you can create. Yes, you can hit it into the corners from the middle of the court, but you're not pulling a player off the court or outside the singles lines necessarily. So Emma knew, I'm not running a whole lot to the R1 because this player, even though if they hit it to A and D, I'm going to be still inside the singles lines when I hit my R1.
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case if you play your return into a corner, A or D, because when you play a return into A or D, deuce corner, add corner, you give your opponent the ability to hit the S1 on an angle or straight up the line, which is obviously more difficult at that point. So Emma's was I'm telling you, she's brilliant in the idea of playing deep cages on the return, because she's taking away the wide air. If she creates enough height, she's taking away the net. So really, she only has things she has to be.
And that's something you want to be brilliant at.
You want to.
If you're going to be brilliant at something.
You want to create depth on the return and get that ball right up on top of the server so that they can't create an angle. And now, typically, she got a lot of short balls for the R1. And then when you get a short ball, you can go into the corners. You can start attacking the corners. This is what I'm finding with junior players that I'm working with. They're able, if they hit the return deep, they typically get a short ball. Now it's time to work on transitioning into the court and attacking the R1. And obviously attacking with margins, and then learning to come in and finish at the net. But that's my assessment of her return. I mean, when you start to talk about it, you're like, this is so simple. But I think the most difficult part about this simplistic plan is the discipline to be able to stick with it over and over and over again throughout the match, trusting in the idea that this is going to work. Yes, you might lose a couple of points here and there, but overall, look at the results that Emma created with this type of strategy. She had a 10-match winning streak. She's the only player in the history of tennis that qualified for a Grand Slam and then won it. And she never dropped a set. Now, some can sit there and we can say, some of us can say, oh, well, this just is a one-time event. And I mean, obviously it is, but I'm looking at it going, wait a minute, we can learn something from Emma here. We can take away, whether she did this intentionally or not, we can take away some very powerful ideas about how to eliminate errors on the shot that makes the most errors.
I think, I've mentioned it before, but we've got some really exciting courses coming up at the Art of Winning, where if you're involved with us, we go into a lot of detail in this stuff. But look, searching for the simple answer is difficult.
It is difficult,
right? Finding the simple, but then incorporating it into your game. I'd say we've got this tendency to go, well, that's obvious, or that's the obvious thing to do. But to get to obviousness and to get to the simplicity requires discipline, strength of character, and a willingness to at least approach changing your perception.
Yeah, you have to.
In the game. And what I wanted to say was that, look, we are doing this day in, day out, you and I I want more people to join us, because it's honestly the stuff we can do together. All right, it'll blow you away. It really will. It is transformative. That's what you name Transform the Practice Court. We're going to do that with you. We really want you on this journey with us, because it's exciting, right? There's no other way to describe it, and that's why we've got these offers on at the moment. Like we have the $1 trial subscription. Try it out. We're not here to ram this down your throat. Have a look, right? And you can learn how to apply this stuff. We've also got the masterclass, which has been really successful. And look, this really does fundamentally change in a very positive way. Not only your if you're a coach, your coaching experience. But as a player, you know, we're on. We're right in there. We're asking the right questions day to day, right? We're not sitting there going, oh, I wonder what's wrong. You know, with these ill-formulated problems sitting there in our head and, you know, getting anxious about the next match. You know, we are day to day, you know, we're reforming the way tennis is perceived and the way we approach the practice court. Styrling, if you've got anything to add to what we've been talking about here.
Well, I would say that, you know, we watch tennis on TV. We watch the pro players do what they do. And sometimes we do become mystified by what they are able to do, how hard they are able to hit the ball, how well they're able to move. And obviously, they're able to do this because they've invested a lot of time and effort in being a high performance athlete. I would say that all those that have joined the Art of Winning and are part of the membership and are learning along with us as we're just, you know, you and I and our team, we're discovering nuances and new things about what we've been talking about. What players that are part of the Art of Winning are expressing is this idea that their perception has changed about how they watch matches now on TV, how they watch the pros. And what they're finding is that the best players in the world, the ones that win over and over again, and, you know, Medvedev did it to Djokovic yesterday and kind of ruined Djokovic's, you know, dream of winning the Grand Slam, which, you know, I was sad for Djokovic, but I looked at Medvedev and he literally did to Novak what Novak does to other people. And obviously Novak was exhausted and he's older than Medvedev. So there was some issues there. And just the pressure of having to win a Grand Slam. But again, I go back to, if you join the Art of Winning, if you look at some of the stuff we're talking about, if you take a master class, if you join the membership and look into the portals, the first thing that's going to happen is your mindset, your perception of how to win is going to change. And those things that you saw were boring before are going to be exciting to you. You're like, oh, wait a minute. And then you can build your game in a way that is confident, that you have the confidence in your shots, that you build that consistency that you've been looking for. And your mindset, you begin to build a mindset that's calm and collected. And you're not guessing anymore so much. And you're not mystified by the fact that you need to hit these wonderful winners to feel good about yourself and to feel like, oh, now I've arrived. Because really, I've always said, you know, those are the icing on the cake, right? It's the cherry on top. But it's the being able to really be a solid player, like Emma, like a Layla, right? Like a Novak, where you go into every match with the confidence, hey, if I'm going to get beat today, this player is going to have to be as solid as I am on playing very powerful first strike patterns.
Yes.
I'm not going to miss returns today. I'm not going to miss S1s today, right? Because those two shots, the return and the S1, more errors happen on those two shots than any other shots in tennis. And we know this because the data says so. And it's been saying this since 2011, since I've been doing this.
Well, it's probably been saying it for longer than that. But
yeah, and other people as well.
Yeah, so you
we're not the only ones saying this. But to look into the data and extract wisdom from the numbers is what we do here at the Art of Winning. And that's what if you join the Art of Winning, if you watch the videos we have on our YouTube channel, on our Instagram channel, if you take the master classes, this is what you discover, is you start to tap into this hidden treasure, right? That's right there in front of our eyes. And you said it best when you said it's difficult to find the simple things because we tend to overlook some of the things that make the biggest difference when you want to become a great player. No matter what your age is, no matter what your level is, you can be the best that you can be on the court. And when you walk off the court, even if you lose, you're like, you know what? I'm building something that's going to last. I'm building a rock solid foundational plan that's going to last. And we've seen it, both you and I, with the players that we work with. We've seen our players become more satisfied at playing the game of tennis and handling winning and losing. And this is what negotiating pressure, our new masterclass, is going to be about, is how do you handle the pressure of winning and losing? Because there's pressure on both ends. And where does that pressure come from? Where does it originate from? And when you go into this, you're going to be surprised if you subscribe to this masterclass, Negotiating Pressure, that we're going to do. You're going to be surprised at what you find out about pressure and where it actually comes from, how to actually deal with it and smother it, not really smother it, but turn it into something powerful that you can use for your own benefit. So how to project pressure onto your opponent by doing certain things. And so that's what Negotiating Pressure is about. So I'm excited about that course, as well as the movement course we're working on. I'm working on a movement course specifically focusing on first strike, the first 4 shots that are struck in a match, because that's where everything begins. And you can continue from there. So I'm excited about what's coming. I was super excited to watch Emma play her matches at the U.S. Open. I'm super excited for the UK and all you guys and gals in England. I know you guys are excited. Tennis is on the up and up in the United Kingdom, as well as all around the world. I think the quality of tennis is going to only increase, and you're going to see a lot more players start to emulate what Layla and Emma are doing by attacking the ball, but attacking it more strategically.
Yeah.
And
so that's been great. Thank you very much, Styrling. And I very much hope to see you in the Art of Winning team. Okay? Because all you have to do is try us out. Thanks, Styrling.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. This was a great talk today. We will talk again soon. Thanks.